Merrick Garland refused to release the affidavit that was supposed to be attached to the warrant. The affidavit is the person, the source. We talked about who the suspected bureaucrat behind the affidavit is. It was based on a Margot Cleveland article at The Federalist. Highly recommend the article. We also discussed it in depth on yesterday's show, so if you haven't watched that, go do so. It's episode 186. Garland refused to release the affidavit because, this is what the Department of Justice says, they refused to release it in order to, quote, protect the integrity of an ongoing law enforcement investigation that implicates national security. Disclosure at this juncture of the affidavit supporting probable cause would, by contrast to previously unsealed filings, cause significant and irreparable damage to this ongoing criminal investigation. Remember when they told us this was about the National Archives? No, it's not. It's not about the National Archives. The National Archives might also be a stooge in this plot. They might be using, the deep state might be using the National Archives as a way to charge Trump. But this is what's going to happen. The Department of Justice is going to indict Trump. They are going to charge him. They are going to try to arrest him. They are going to impanel a grand jury in Washington, D.C. Remember, Washington, D.C. is made up of 95% very partisan radical leftists who donated to Hillary Clinton. This neutral administrative state, remember, 95% for Hillary Clinton, but neutral, not politically biased here. Then they're going to have a DC jury that's picked from this jury pool of very radical leftists, and it's going to result in a conviction of President Trump. This is what the left is trying to do. There are some people on the right who don't believe the radical left will actually take it this far. Believe it. I believe it. They've told us what they're going to do. They've showed us the roadmap. This is what they're going to do. Here's the thing. You and I have recourse here. There's something that we can do before it gets to that point. We can destroy this before it gets to the point where a DC grand jury is impaneled and then a jury is picked from this pool of very radical leftists. And remember what happened, by the way. We just saw a case study and what happens when someone from the deep state is tried in a DC jury with a DC jury from the DC jury pool in the Michael Sussman case. We saw that this evidence against Michael Sussman was pretty cut and dry. It wasn't that questionable. This should have been a very easy case, but there were radical leftists on his jury who sided with him. I mean, there was one juror on the Michael Sussman trial whose kid actually played soccer with Michael Sussman's kid. There were other jurors who donated to Hillary Clinton, who donated to AOC. These were very radical leftist people who claimed that they could be unbiased, but they were posting online that they weren't unbiased at all. They were very, very partisan. We have a case study. We know exactly what's going to happen. Michael Sussman wasn't convicted of the crime that he committed. It was so obvious that he committed this. The reason he wasn't convicted was because this jury was made up of radical leftists. Well, we have to destroy this plot by the left before it gets to this point. We have to destroy it before it comes to fruition. And the way that we do that is we destroy it in the court of public opinion. We identify it and debunk it in order to nip it in the bud. Because the one thing that will stop the radical left from carrying through on a plot to charge Trump and indict Trump and arrest Trump and try Trump and convict Trump is if it is politically harmful to them. If they realize that doing so would use so much political capital that it would cause every voter in this country to vote against the Democrats. That's the only way that the Democrats don't do this. And so you and I, what we have to do is we have to follow along every lie, every tweet, every iteration of the narrative, and do what we did with the Trump passport story. Look at that Norah O'Donnell tweet and identify that rhetorical sleight of hand. Look for that phraseology that tips us off to what they really mean. Be skeptical, be disbelieving. Refuse to believe that what they say is true on its face. And force them to show their hands, force them to show their cards by showing our receipts. If we do this, if we identify it, we will be able to nip it in the bud. And the only thing that will stop the left is if they lose in the court of public opinion. And we have the power to make that happen.